Welcome to the Ben and Lauren Show. I'm Ben, and this is Lauren, and here we are, another night.
Another night.
Now, we skipped last week, didn't we?
It was Shavuot, and we had a double Sabbath.
Right.
And then once we got into the week, we just were so exhausted by bedtime every night.
So it seems like we're doing these Ben and Lauren shows every other week. But I don't know, once we get the routine, we'll get maybe once a week going again.
Could be.
Maybe we could do twice a week. Maybe
That's ambitious.
We could do every night.
Daniel's going to have to start sleeping through the night to do twice a week.
So, yeah, Daniel's having trouble sleeping at night. He's got some eczema on his feet, and he scratches and he scratches and he scratches and he scratches. You can hear it. I don't know if you can hear that. It's kind of like that
sound.
Yeah,
well, he wakes up at night, and normally he would wake up at night and he would nurse, but he can't do that anymore. I never intend to wean my babies, but when I'm expecting around 20 weeks or so, there's no choice. There's nothing left for the babies to nurse with. Now,
so he's having trouble basically weaning.
Some of our kids have just continued nursing anyway, milk or no milk. Daniel gets very frustrated that there's no milk, and when he's frustrated, he scratches. He finds something to scratch, usually his feet.
And there's been instances where he'll just get up out of bed, go over to your side of the bed, and just stand there and cry.
Yeah.
And it's rough. It's rough for me because it wakes me up, and then,
he wants
wakes us both up.
He wants me to put him in bed and nurse him. Now, if he would just cuddle and go back to sleep, he'd be fine. But he gets very upset that he can't nurse. So he thrashes around, he scratches his feet. So finally I give up and I put him in bed. And then if I just leave him there, he will scratch his feet to the point where he will scratch the skin off them. They will be covered in scabs. So I have to actually sit there and hold his hands and keep him from scratching until he finally gives up and goes to sleep.
Now, what I've been doing is when he does that, because he's awake, I've been picking him up and just kind of walking around with him for a while till he falls asleep.
I've tried that, and he just keeps obsessing about wanting me to nurse him.
So only I can do that.
Yeah, that's that.
He falls asleep on me.
Yeah, he will not fall asleep on me right now. He just is too upset that Mama will not nurse him.
So I came up with an idea. I put adult-size socks on his feet, which cover his whole foot and his leg all the way up to his knee.
He looked like he was wearing moon boots. He was walking around this morning.
But the big socks seem to cushion it enough that he doesn't want to scratch it.
Well, and he can't get his hand inside to scratch his feet.
Right. So that seems to be helping.
Plus, we've invented our own lotion. We have tried so many different lotions to heal his skin up. So many different protocols.
I don't know if you can read any of that.
So, at this point, we've settled on. We have.
So it's a beeswax ointment, lotion with A&D ointment
mixed in,
frankincense oil, tea tree oil, and lavender oil, and CBD oil all together.
Now, the CBD was the latest addition, and Ben's dad suggested we try that 4 months ago for his eczema. And I'm a little leery of using the CBD on the kids. I know that it's legal.
And there's no psychedelic effect.
And we're not giving it to him internally. We're using the oil on his skin, and we're talking about a few drops.
And we're not treating it like a drug, per se. We're treating it like a skin healing ointment.
These are all true things. I just can't shake the idea that it is dangerous to have things in the house that are treading on the edge of legality. And even though the CBD oil is completely legal.
It's legal in the state of Michigan, too.
Well, did you hear my dad's response when I said I was using CBD oil?
I know. He started making jokes.
No, the first thing he said was, oh, yeah, that's marijuana. It's like, no, it's not marijuana. Marijuana is made from the buds of a specific plant, and it's used as a drug in a certain way, and this is not that.
So was he surprised when you described marijuana as the buds of the plant and CBD oil as an extract?
He just brushed it off because in his mind, when you say the CBD oil,
it means marijuana.
It's a cannabinoid oil.
We eat hemp seeds too.
People eat hemp seeds. You can get hemp milk at the grocery store. I mean,
it's actually really good.
Yeah, hemp milk is good.
It's delicious.
These things are all available, but because there is this perception, I've been nervous about the oil. So Dad suggested it 4 months ago, and I'm like, everyone's trying CBD for everything right now. I'm concerned about it. So But the other night we were over there and Daniel was really going nuts about his feet. And Dad said, I really think you should try this oil. So we said, all right, Dad, we'll try the oil. And we put a few drops on Daniel's feet. And he almost immediately, you could see the redness in his skin go right down.
So we noticed a big difference right away.
We did notice a difference right away.
Within like 20 minutes.
We came home and we started reading on why that would be. And it's actually very interesting. I didn't understand why it would work. So
that's why we've included it in our ointment.
There's a long explanation, but it does seem like it is very effective for things like psoriasis and eczema.
Now, there's only a few drops of CBD oil in this.
There was only a few left in the bottle.
Yeah, we really don't have very much. So this is mostly just A&D ointment and the beeswax.
I think there's about 6 drops of the CBD oil in there.
But, smells really nice with the frankincense and the tea tree and the lavender.
And the tea tree oil is because it's possible that there's a bacterial element to the eczema that he has because he's been scratching so much.
But if he has an opened scrape, that can kind of sting a little bit with the tea tree, right?
Right, so you have to be really careful how much you put in. You're only talking a few drops.
But there's just a tiny bit of tea tree in this.
Right.
So hopefully this will help.
Well, that's a blend of everything I've been putting on him. It's just all mixed together now.
Well, make it easier.
Yep. So... But we've been very tired because this will often happen a couple times at night. And so I'm getting like 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night. I get more sleep with a newborn.
It was sometime today that you were like falling asleep.
This morning before we went to Bible study.
We were getting ready to go.
I'm not going to be able to stay awake, but we did not want to miss Bible study. We haven't been there for like 5 weeks, 6 weeks.
5 weeks. No, 7 weeks because...
Passover. We were there for Passover. That was
last time we went was for Passover, and then it was a full 7 weeks because then Shavuot, and then this week is the week after. So this is the 8th week.
And then next week they're not meeting, so it's like we better go or we're going to miss everybody again for 2 more weeks.
So they showered us with gifts. They said, "You've been gone for so long. We've got all these gifts piled up for you now." It's like, gifts? What are you talking about, gifts?
It's like, I'm so sorry.
It's what happens when you have children. People have things they want to give to the children, and when we're not there, it all kind of accumulates.
People are very generous.
They are, and if they're watching, thank you very much.
People we know have been very generous. A lot of people in our life are very kind, are very generous.
Yep.
I don't know if everybody has this in their life, but it's in our life. So, we were out of quarantine this week, finally. Obviously, if we went to Bible study.
Yep. Yeah, we've been kind of confining ourselves indoors in our house for weeks at a time and get kind of stir crazy after a while.
Well, the kids we've been outside like for walks and bike rides and things like that, but staying out of other people's way.
Now, you did go to a mission. You got the Dress Barn mission.
Oh, yeah, that was this week.
Mm-hmm.
I had a gift certificate to Dress Barn that I've been hanging on to for a while, mostly because I'm usually either wearing maternity clothes or trying to get back to my normal size after wearing maternity clothes. I haven't wanted to spend it. But I was hearing some rumors that Dress Barn's having some trouble, and I didn't want them to go out of business and not be able to spend the gift card.
But you got there, it didn't look like they were going out of business.
When I got to their store, they had a "We are hiring" sign on the door. I'm wondering if this is one of those rumors that... I don't know what the story is, but anyway, I got a very nice sweater to go with a lot of my dresses that replaces one that I lost recently that was just worn out.
That was unusual, but I actually sent you off to get it. On was it Friday or Thursday?
Thursday.
Because I said, if you don't do it Thursday, you're not going to do it Friday. You're not going to do it Saturday. We're not going to do it Sunday. You're not going to get over there till Monday.
And Monday was the last day they would hold the order for me.
And we would have been really scrambling to do it. So
anyway.
I watched in one of those unusual cases, Lauren was sent off by herself for a short period of time. Yeah, she zoomed over there, got her stuff, and then zoomed right back.
It was almost dinner time, too, so I had to really hurry because we had rush hour traffic. And
pick up a rotisserie chicken on the way home.
So Ben's like, well, did you have a nice outing? And it's like, I don't want to say it wasn't an outing because Ben did take care of everybody and made sure it happened. It's like, I pretty much drove as quickly as I could there, got done with business as quickly as I could, and came straight home. It was not...
Now, normally we do things, but normally we do things together. It's like an event. We all go in the car, we all go somewhere, we all do the thing, and then come back.
I didn't stop to look at anything in the store. I didn't.
You probably did better than I would.
It's not like I went out and got hot chocolate and took a walk around the mall or whatever.
Yeah. I have a hard time being focused when it comes to that kind of stuff. I'll be like, I don't know, maybe pick up some chicken nuggets. I don't know.
Well, the difference is that I'm responsible to make sure dinner gets made, and I knew what time it was.
It was the time crunch.
Right. Yeah.
And we had a good dinner that night. You brought home a rotisserie chicken, and
You told me to go to the store and get rotisserie chicken.
yes, I did. I said, that's what you're going to do. You said, I don't know what we're going to do for dinner, and I don't have time to go to Dress Barn. I said, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go to Dress Barn. You're going to pick up what you need to pick up. You're going to pick up a rotisserie chicken on the way home, and dinner's all taken care of.
So I did.
That's exactly what happened. But we had some frustration. We had some computer problems on the way.
Computer just decided to quit talking to the internet altogether, and I needed to print out the confirmation email.
Could have saved a lot of time just go on my computer.
Well, you were working, and I didn't want to bother you, and then ultimately I tried to reset the router, which disconnected his connection to what he was doing. I didn't even think of that.
Meanwhile, you disrupted me more by...
That was not my brightest moment.
Well, that's not why I brought it up. I was not trying to illustrate a not bright moment, but anyway.
That's what happens when I'm in a hurry. Sometimes I do not think things all the way through.
But it got taken care of. But we normally do things together. That's an unusual thing.
Maybe that threw me off too.
Maybe. So what else do we do? Oh, the dandelion wine. Now this dandelion wine's been making appearances on the Ben and Lauren show, and it's now in a much smaller container. I bottled it.
As you can see, it's like crystal clear now.
Yeah, you may have seen it before, and it was very foggy, kind of
dark. It was black when we first made it.
But you can see the color. I mean, you can see right through that. It's like a beautiful amber golden color.
It smells pretty nice, too, now. It smells kind of like... I said it smelled a little bit like fruitcake to me. It smells like citrus and raisins, and... You can smell the dandelions. They do. If you have a whole bunch of dandelions in your hand, you smell them.
If you had smell-o-vision, you can we'll just open this up and you can smell it.
Dandelions smell a little bit like honey.
Yeah.
And that's what this smells like. And there's no honey in it, so that's the only thing that can be making that smell.
So my only comment is that when we sampled it, it's young. It's a young wine. You got to let it mellow out. You got to let it age for...
The alcohol in it's like really raw, and you wouldn't want to drink a glass of it.
In my opinion, it doesn't smell real pleasant to me yet. I think it will be. I mean, there's a scent there that is pleasant, but the alcohol scent is so strong, it's kind of pungent.
Well, if you put it in a glass and let the alcohol evaporate off it, it smelled a lot better, remember?
And when I tried it, I could taste where it tasted pretty good. So,
one of the things about wine is that if you let it sit and you let it breathe, basically what starts happening is the alcohol evaporates off, and what you're left with is a lot more of the flavors of the preserved juice.
I think that was the point. The alcohol preserved it, and the idea is not really to drink the alcohol, but to let the alcohol kind of evaporate, and in the meantime, it preserves all the flavors.
Right, because if you just try to bottle a juice or a tea in a container like this with just a lid or a cork or something, it would go moldy and it would rot, it would decompose. But the alcohol preserves it, so you can preserve a large amount of whatever you're making.
Long term. And I like these bottles because they're resealable. You can pop it open. I don't know if there's much carbonation in here. Probably not.
Probably not. It wasn't too fizzy. I think we'd have to use some different processes to get it to be fizzy.
But what I'm really pleased about is how clear it is, because it was so foggy before.
It was pretty murky, pretty swampy.
And it just cleared right up. It's this beautiful golden color.
It actually looks like something that you could call dandelion wine now, where when we first made it, it was really black, like very dark tea. It's like, well, this doesn't look like anything you'd describe as...
I have to check old Ben and Lauren shows to see what it used to look like.
So that was interesting to take a look at how it came out and bottle it. And we also found out that the little bit we had left over makes an excellent fruit fly trap. Ben poured it in a glass on the counter, and we found fruit flies all over the house.
It attracted every fruit fly from probably 100 miles away.
So... It was funny, we had other things sitting out that you would think would attract fruit flies, and they did not.
Nope, but the dandelion wine did.
It's now become, that little tiny bit that was left over is our fruit fly trap.
I don't think we're going to drink it now. It's got, multitudes of dead flies in it.
It serves a purpose, and we'll
Yeah.
drink the other stuff later. And I don't think we were going to drink it anyway. Wasn't really ready for drinking of any kind.
I dumped out the one with all the leaves in it.
Oh, that was awful. Yeah, you wouldn't want to
You
drink
get all that junk at the bottom.
Yeah,
dump that out.
There is this really yucky stuff that settles at the bottom. It's like a gray sludge.
It's probably all the stuff from the raisins and fruit.
Whatever it is, dead yeast cells.
Dead yeast. So yeah, it's got orange, lemon, a lot of raisins. That's what we gave it kind of the funny look to it.
Dandelions and black tea.
Dandelions and black tea. And a lot of sugar.
Yeah, although it's not sweet anymore.
All the sugar's kind of been burned off.
The sugar's been eaten. It's not sweet, it's tart.
So we'll sample it maybe in a year, 6 months.
Guess we'll find out if it was worth making. It's a very old recipe.
And we still have cranberry wine that we have not opened yet.
So what are we going to try next? Are we going to make like root beer or ginger beer or something? I'd still like to try old-fashioned root beer, making it.
That would be fun.
Because you don't ferment that real long at all. You just ferment it just long enough to get it carbonated.
We could make cherry wine.
We could.
That's kind of been on my list.
Cherries are going to be coming in a few weeks.
Could do blueberry wine. You need a lot of blueberries.
Yeah.
We'll come up with something.
Come up with something interesting. So, what else do we do? We finished planting our garden.
Yep.
And a lot of the seeds are coming up.
The garden's looking really good.
Well,
it always looks good.
It always looks good in June. The question is, what does it look like when you're harvesting in August?
In June, it looks good because everything's all nice and neat and little sprouts coming up and
you haven't gotten funguses and bugs.
Fresh dirt down and just everything's all nice and neat and ready.
This is a record size for our garden.
Gets bigger every year.
We have more stuff than I've ever planted before.
So we planted the tatsoi. It's up. The Malabar spinach and the Egyptian spinach both are not up.
I'm not sure about them. The seeds for the Egyptian spinach are a year or two old. If they don't start coming up in the next few days, I'm going to have to think of something else to plant.
Where did we get the Egyptian spinach from?
Zach and Jamie Bauer, the American Homestead, sent us.
But they're a little bit older now.
They are a couple years old now. 2, I think. I've been keeping them sealed in the refrigerator, which should preserve them, but we'll see. We planted melons. Papa Pepper, Kevin, sent us free melon seeds. So I planted everything I could. I got one type of melon to germinate. The other 2, I don't see anything from. So we'll see if they come up. And I have cantaloupe.
Our peppers, the nata pinos, have come up.
And we have the Sugar Rush peach peppers. We have a banana pepper.
Good. I like banana peppers.
Yeah. And we have zucchini and summer squash. We have okra. We have turnips. We have beets.
Carrots.
We have carrots. We have the 2 spinaches. We have tomatoes and we have cucumbers.
And beans.
And lots of beans. 2 different kinds of beans. We've got green beans and red noodle beans. Chinese red noodle beans.
It'll be neat to try the red noodle beans.
Yeah, we were given a whole bunch of seeds and it's like, oh, we got to try this one.
The red noodle beans are up, right?
No, none of the beans are up. I planted those and they'll be probably another few days, which is good because I have to get the fencing up for the rabbits quickly. So
we have the widest variety of vegetables this year than we've ever had. So
we'll see what we actually get out of the garden.
Looks like it's not centered. Now I'm noticing this.
It's fine. So the garden is big.
Mm-hmm.
We have to get mulch for it. We have some mulch, but it's not going to last.
We got a whole bunch of rabbit manure down on our...
You keep talking about the rabbit manure.
I'm excited about the rabbit manure. We drove a long way to get it. When you live in suburbia, you got to go a long way to get rabbit manure.
I tried a new method for planting the seeds into the garden, too. I've planted seeds for a few years just by, pulling aside the leaf mulch we had there and planting the seeds into the ground. And I was having very difficult time getting those seeds to germinate. Now, I did not want to dig up the ground because when you do that, you disturb first of all, you disturb all the worms and all the good they've been doing. You kind of disturb the ecosystem of the dirt. Mm. So we've been reading advice that it's best not to till up or turn up the garden. But I can't get the seeds to get started. So what I did this year was I pulled back the leaf mulch and spread down like maybe about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch layer of compost over the dirt. Mm-hmm. Sowed the seeds into the compost as a seed starter. And that seems to be working really well. They've taken right off.
Well, we've noticed we have a lot of maple trees around, and those little twirlies come falling down. And it's amazing. Every twirly that's landed on the compost has sprouted up, and not only sprouted up,
Within 5 days.
gotten really tall, and when you pluck it out, the
grow a
root's really
forest.
long. So obviously that's very fertile soil.
They're taken right off.
Yeah, I mean you can grow a tree in there real fast.
My big concern about the new garden beds is if we have enough compost and manure and stuff on top of the old dirt to really give the plants a good foothold.
I think so.
Because what we did was we were following back to Eden gardening method, which I found a documentary on that this week, and I've read the method, but I hadn't ever seen the documentary, and Abigail watched most of it while I was sort of listening, and she was glued to the screen. It's her first year that she's really taken an interest in gardening. But
yeah, she has her own little garden, right?
Right, she does. And what they were talking about was you basically leave the ground alone. You don't till it up to start a new garden bed. You cover it with like paper or something to kill off anything that's there. And then you put in layers of things that the plants can actually grow in. And you put that about 6 inches deep. And then you put about 6 inches of mulch on top of that.
And that's what we did on the new part of the garden.
Right. And my biggest concern is if there is enough of the new soil to let the plants get going so they can burrow down into the older soil.
I think it should be okay.
Well, we're going to find out, I guess. If not, next year we'll be adding more to that side of the garden anyway, and it will eventually become more fertile.
Put lots of manure down. Cold manure.
Well, we'll just keep working on it. Anyway, that's kind of exciting. It's exciting that we've grown our garden long enough now that we've gotten more experienced and we can actually begin expanding into other stuff.
Again, it always looks really good when we start, so we'll see at the end of the summer
We'll see what goes on.
What fruit we actually get from.
I am hoping for a melon this year. At
I'm
least
hoping-
one after all those plants.
I want a peach. We have 2 peach trees, and we've never had a single peach from any of them.
I don't know about the peach trees. They're still not looking good. I have to...
The apple tree's looking better.
It is. There's a few clusters of apples.
So we have 2 peach trees, an apple, and 2 cherries, a sweet and a tart.
And one of our cherry trees, I think, has fire blight. I have to fight that.
Yeah, our cherries are having trouble.
Fruit trees are really tough to grow. It is hard to get fruit off a fruit tree, and it takes a
Surprisingly.
lot of trial and error and experience and learning to get the fruit trees to produce. And I think we may have too many in the space that we have. But
Excuse me.
this is the first year I think we probably fertilized them properly. Probably.
We should do that every year.
We'll see.
I think they're nutrient starved, and we just fed them.
Well, and they're young trees, and if we just keep learning and working on them, eventually we should get a crop.
I think so.
It might not be this year, but we'll just keep learning.
So I put the Bucky bloom down around the fruit trees. What I did is took
It's a liquid cow manure product.
cow manure, so dug little holes all the way around the drip line of the tree and poured just a little bit of the liquid manure down each one. So hopefully that should help fertilize those trees.
Yep.
We'll see if that makes a difference. And then we put the rabbit manure down on top of that,
And this
too.
is our second year mulching the trees also.
Mm-hmm. Now, we did Bucky bloom on the tomatoes, and they just exploded.
Except I used the dry form of it, and your dad was saying that the liquid form is for helping with fruit. It has more calcium and other things in it that help fruiting. And what I put down last year was all the dry stuff. So we got massive growth out of the tomato plants. I mean, we had 10-foot tall tomato plants. They were so tall, I had to trellis them over onto another trellis because they'd reached the top of the 6-foot one, and then they went the other 4 feet over.
That was neat.
But even though they bloomed and bloomed and bloomed, we had a great deal of difficulty getting them to set fruit. The fruit they did set was gigantic.
Now, the cherry tomatoes had tons of fruit.
They did. But the regular tomatoes, the heirloom tomatoes, dropped like 2/3 of their flowers without setting fruit. So had they produced the fruit that they were blooming for, we would have had bushels of tomatoes last year.
But the tomatoes that did grow, they were big.
And they were good.
They were
The flavor was good. We've never had tomatoes with such good flavor.
They were fantastic.
So this year we're growing a different variety of heirlooms.
We're not doing the pink ones this year.
No. We're doing ones that are called Lady Rebecca, I think is the name of them.
We got those also from Baker Creek.
We did.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that we can get them to yield. And I think I'm going to follow your dad's advice. I'm going to put the liquid on them. They've already got the dry in the soil. I'm going to put the liquid on them with the watering.
So between the compost, manure compost, and the rabbit manure, and the Bucky bloom, should get something, right?
And if this is boring, Sorry about that. But we're very excited about the gardening.
Yeah, we're very excited about the gardening.
This has been a several-year project to work on learning how, not just to get the plants to grow, but if you're going to spend the time to put into the garden, you need to get fruit out of it. And if you don't get fruit out of it, next year you got to try something different.
Mm-hmm. And keep trying until you figure it out.
And learn what is it that keeps it from producing fruit. Because the truth is, that's the only reason to grow a garden.
And don't grow it bigger than you can handle.
Right. And
we've been slowly expanding the garden every year, but we don't go crazy.
And it has been more fruitful each year. Like the first year we planted it in the space it's in, we basically got nothing.
Mm-hmm.
There was no fruit.
It was just
there's no fruit from the garden.
You know, it's interesting we're talking about fruit. It kind of goes right into our Torah portion we were talking about.
It does.
So today at Bible study we were talking about fruit. The whole conversation was about fruit and about vessels, about being an empty jar or being a jar, and what kind of fruit is in the jar, what kind of...
God made us to bear fruit.
Right.
When God planted us in his garden, he does not want to put us in the garden and there to be nothing to show for it. And he doesn't just want any old fruit. He wants a specific kind of fruit.
Right. Because, you know, God says, be fruitful and multiply. I actually think that's 2 commands. Number 1, be fruitful. Number 2, multiply. That's just not one command. So how do we be fruitful? Well, we bear fruit. Is it good fruit? Is it bad fruit? Is it useful fruit? Is it worthless fruit? What kind of fruit are you producing? But then Yeshua talks about a specific kind of fruit that is fruit that comes from him.
It has to be grounded. He is the vine. We are the branches of the vine. We are to produce fruit that comes from him.
Mm-hmm.
So the fruit that we are supposed to be producing is the fruit that comes from basically the root and the plant of Messiah.
Yep. And
so we're supposed to look like him, basically,
right. We should
producing
walk
his fruit.
as he walked.
Right.
So, yeah, another good observation that I never quite caught before is that God created man in his image and his likeness. And I always thought that was the same thing, image, likeness. But no, image is us. Image. You know, we have 2 hands, a head, and arms and legs. That's, you know.
Apparently, we're in his image.
Male and female.
Look like him.
He, you know, in his image. But then in his likeness is something a little different. That means our behavior is like him.
Right.
We walk like he walks. He expects us to not only be in his image, but to be in his likeness, to have his attributes.
You can have a child that looks like you and has a totally different personality, which has been the case, for instance, with Abigail, our oldest. She looks a lot like I did as a child. There are bits of her personality that are like me, but overall her personality is actually a lot more like Ben's mother, whom she doesn't look very much like at all.
So you're seeing this image and likeness different.
So her image is different than her likeness.
Mm-hmm. But the likeness can change.
It could. I mean, in people, your likeness can...
Right. I mean, obviously your image can change to a certain extent, but mostly it's your character that God's interested in. It's not so much just your image.
Your spirit.
Right. So image and likeness, I thought that was an interesting...
That was a very interesting point.
And then we read the Torah portion, which kind of goes along with that to a certain extent. I don't know. Can you make a connection there?
With the fruit?
Well, there's good fruit and there's bad fruit.
Everything is about fruit. Everything in the Bible is about land and fruit.
It is. What's the Bible about? Land and fruit.
Real estate.
Real estate.
Real estate and gardens. So, well, the Torah portion was very long and covered a lot of ground this week. So you can choose any number of portions of it to focus on.
Speaking of numbers, it is Numbers chapter, do you remember?
I don't remember.
I just remember chapter 7. I think it's Numbers chapter 7 was the last chapter. And it went through all of the gifts, or the temple articles.
It ends with the consecration of the tabernacle, with everyone bringing all the gifts.
But it goes tribe by tribe by tribe by tribe. So you have 12 tribes and then a 13th summary, and it's very long.
Okay, but that's the end of the Torah portion. The rest of the Torah portion, see, where does it start?
Well, it talks about the sons of Levi.
The duties of the priests. So that's the first chunk is talking about the duties of the 3 different sons of Levi, their descendants.
Mm-hmm.
Then it moves on to cleansing the camp of defilement. So you're supposed to take various groups of people and put them outside the camp if they are unclean. They are to stay outside the camp until they are either clean or forever,
Mm-hmm.
because God said there cannot be impurity in the camp.
It talks about retribution. If you've committed a sin, that you make up for it 100% plus another 20% on top of that.
So then there was a discussion of the legal system
Mm-hmm.
of God's camp.
Yep.
Then there was the discussion of the test of the adulterous wife, which is, if you think about all the laws that God gave, the test of the adulterous wife takes up a lot of space.
It
a lot
does.
of time.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was the vows of the Nazarites.
Yep, the Nazarite vow, which is also fairly long.
That took up a lot of space.
And then the Aaronic benediction.
That's another study all on its own.
And it's very tiny. It's a short little section nestled in there.
You shall place my name upon my people.
Mm-hmm. And if my people, who are called by my name...
Right. So it describes placing his name on his people. And then we have the list of the gifts from the 12 tribes. That was the Torah portion this week. So
It was a long one.
the question is, so since we've been talking about gardens and fruit and fruitfulness and fruit of the Spirit, which one of those subjects would best tie in?
I actually think the Aaronic benediction would tie in the best.
Except there's one problem.
Mm-hmm.
We really didn't discuss the Aaronic benediction very much, so this would be completely stream of consciousness what you're about to do.
It's okay. That's fine.
We spent a lot of time talking about the test of the adulterous wife.
Well, the test of the adulterous wife is kind of a test for bad fruit. Basically, if a husband is jealous or suspicious of his wife, God gives provision to put the wife to the test to see if she is faithful or not. And there's a whole procedure in there where the dirt from the tabernacle floor is picked up and put in the water, and it's written out with God's name, and the water and the ink is washed off and it's put in the water, and the woman has to drink the water.
If she's innocent, and she joins in the prayer that says if she has committed adultery, that she's going to be cursed with a very terrible illness.
So she agrees to it. She basically agrees to, okay, if I am faithful. So that means if she's not faithful, she will refuse to drink it.
If she's not faithful, she's pretty brazen. And she doesn't believe in God.
Right.
If she agrees to this.
So for a woman to commit adultery and be so hardened in heart or so self-deceived that she would be willing to go through this whole test where the priest describes
what's going
to happen if you have been unfaithful and you drink of this cup, then she drinks of the cup and that will happen. Essentially, she becomes barren, her belly will swell, her thigh will, what was it?
It sounds like it will decompose or it will decay. It's stricken with some type of
It's bad, whatever it is.
It's nasty, whatever it is.
But if she's innocent, then she'll drink it, nothing bad will happen.
Not only that, she will conceive children.
Yeah, she'll be fertile.
It will make her...
And
that's a proof.
And she's exonerated.
So my first thought when we were reading this is it suddenly occurred to me, why did God make... Now, I'm going to preface this by saying a lot of people think that they know the answer to this, that God just is always on the side of the men. I don't believe that. So my question is not coming from that perspective.
But your question is, why isn't there a test
I'm
like
gonna
this?
fix this? It's bugging me a little bit.
Why isn't there a test also for the men?
Why is it that there's a test for the adulterous wife, but there's not a test if a wife is jealous of her husband and thinks he's been unfaithful to her? Why can she not bring him before the tabernacle? Because God is very even-handed when it comes to men and women in his law.
Yes.
He does not, as many of the cultures of the day, women were basically, they were not exactly cattle.
I would have thought of it that way.
Meaning they were almost a possession.
Well, a husband is a possessor to a certain extent.
Yes. And you can see in the behavior of the women of the Bible that possession did not mean that they did not have a certain amount of fire and spirit.
Oh,
and
yeah.
They went their own way.
And great influence.
So it's not like these are women who are slaves. But when you look at this provision that God made for the adulterous wife, the question that came to my mind is, why is there only a provision for an adulterous wife? And I do not believe that the answer is God only cared about the husband being jealous and not the wife.
Mm-hmm.
So taking that belief into this, believing that God is good, that he is even-handed, that the women are his daughters as much as the men are his sons,
Mm-hmm.
why would God make a provision for a man to test his wife, but not a wife to test her husband?
That's a great question.
And there's a couple of potential answers, but I think perhaps one of the reasons God dwelled on this particular subject was because he had just created a covenant with his people in which they were like a wife to him. He says, I am like a husband to you.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the type of covenant that he enacted with his people, was pretty much a marriage covenant. He agreed to be their protector, to provide for them, to give them children, to give them wealth, to provide for them as a good husband provides for a wife. And I think the reason that he put in this test for an adulterous wife was to set up in the future, when his people were going to willfully go their way and to an extreme extent pursue other husbands, as he called them, other lovers, that he had already set up a picture of what it would look like for a husband to test an adulterous wife.
Mm-hmm.
That's one reason I thought of.
Yeah, we read about the cup of God's wrath, you know. I don't know if that's the same cup, but we do know of a cup that Yeshua drank from.
We also know that God put away his faithful people as a man divorces a wife.
Mm-hmm.
And when he did that, he cannot take them back by his own law.
So the Israelites, by his own word, basically said God had divorced them and they are no longer able, according to his own word, to be in covenant with him again or married to him again. However, there is some good news.
If Yeshua took on the curse, and Paul refers to it as the curse of the law,
Mm-hmm.
but we are wondering if the curse of the law is a specific curse in the law, a curse provided for by the law.
Could be.
And this is one that is detailed and spelled out, a curse of the adulterous wife.
So if Yeshua became sin for us in our place, then if he took on the curse himself, cursed is every man who's hung on a tree.
He takes on the curse of breaking the covenant.
Right. So he takes that upon himself, and his belly swells, and his thigh, decays,
Was
damaged. Then, and he drank from that cup.
The cup of bitter water.
The cup of bitterness. So even though he is righteous and he is innocent, he's taking on
He took on a curse.
the curse of the unfaithful wife.
Or the curse of adultery.
Adultery.
And by dying, having taken on that curse, it cancels it.
That's right. It opens up people who put their trust in him now to be grafted in and be brought in.
And it allows for a covenant to be remade, a marriage covenant, a new covenant to be made.
And it would be grafted, Jew and Gentile alike would be grafted, because remember, the branches that are broken off, how more easily can they be grafted back in?
Everything was torn apart by the breaking of the covenant. The good branches, the wild branches, everything was all in disarray. When Yeshua died and then rose again, he became the new tree that everything can be grafted into.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing that, the roots of that tree are in his Father. And that means that all of us, as he says in John, become perfected into one person. It's as if we are one person grafted together, like in a marriage covenant, when
Mm-hmm.
two become one.
Right. Because he will be our God and we will be his people.
And that is the kind, I think, many of the laws concerning marriage and the things that God talks about concerning marriage are all bits and pieces of a picture of how his covenant with us, with his people, works.
And it all goes back again to fruit, because he is grafting onto him, right?
Right.
That we're built into, rooted into him, and that the branches extending out from him, he's the source.
Right. And we are meant to be filled with his spirit, to be in his likeness, So the fruit that we produce is the fruit of the Spirit, the love, the fruit that's characterized by love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and faithfulness and gentleness and self-control. That's the characteristic of the fruit that we're intended to grow.
Notice it's fruit singular. It's not fruits.
Right, it's a fruit. This just characterizes the fruit of the Spirit.
It's a good fruit.
And that is why
fruit from the tree of life.
When I started looking at what God is talking about here with the adulterous wife, it's like, okay, this is one more little description God is telling us about a covenant and about how a covenant works. And we don't need to test God. We don't need to be jealous of him and test him to see if he's been unfaithful. He never is unfaithful.
Right, but he is a jealous God.
Well, he has a right to be because we are prone to be unfaithful.
Right.
That's what tzitzits are all about.
Right. So if we want to start lusting and looking another way, we're to look at the tzitzit. You probably can't see them in the video, but look at them and remember the covenant. Remember the commandments. Right. Remember the agreement between man and between God. That's
how it came in my mind to reconcile that there's no test for the adulterous husband. The other thing, the practical, real-world thing that we were thinking about is for a wife to commit adultery in that time and place would be similar to what it would be like for, in our marriage, for me to try to commit adultery. It would be very, very difficult.
It's a very strange thought experiment.
But it'd be very difficult because we are together so much, because our lives are woven together so much, for me to somehow sneak away and first of all, form that kind of relationship, conduct that kind of relationship, and not get caught, which were all provisions for this test of the adulterous wife. It would take very deliberate intent and a lot of planning and a very hard heart to carry through with this. You would have to be extremely determined as a wife to make this happen.
There's also a thought that the men had a lot of accountability because they were so well connected between one another.
If a man was jealous of his wife, he had a good idea who he was jealous of.
If a man was cheating on his wife, the people around him would know, most likely. It would be very difficult for them not to know.
So ultimately, this test of the adulterous wife was an excellent protection for innocent wives. Because in the eyes of the entire community and very publicly, she would be exonerated of her husband's suspicions. And if he proceeded to divorce her, she still would have a good name because people would look at the husband and say, how dare you? God proved her innocent. What did you put her away for?
So the fact that she would actually take that test pretty much shows that she is innocent, and she will be
unharmed,
and she will be exonerated if she's not harmed by the test.
This was a protection for wives that's almost unheard of. It would clear her name. It would clear her name among all her neighbors and in her community. And if her husband persisted in being jealous and put her away,
it would be on him.
It would all be on him, and she would not have difficulty having another husband marry her.
Right.
Because she had been cleared, and her name was clear, and her reputation was clear. And that is almost an unheard of protection for women for this period of time, that her name could be cleared, that there was a way to provide for her to prove her innocence.
So there was provision given by God to clear the innocent woman.
Yes.
The faithful wife.
And to make it obvious if there was an unfaithful wife.
And to, basically condemn the unfaithful wife.
Right.
So that was one of the more interesting sections of the Torah portion that we read.
And actually, in the end, it does come around to fruit.
It's testing the fruit. Is it good fruit? Is it rotten fruit?
And it's also showing the fruit that God wants us to produce.
Absolutely.
So.
Well, that's our Torah portion. So we made it to 43 minutes.
Wow.
That's about average. We seem to do that about.
Well, we keep trying to cut it off before 40 minutes, but.
So if you've made it this far, have a wonderful evening wherever you are, morning, afternoon, whatever. And say goodnight, Lauren.
Good night, Lauren.
She always does that.
You always do that.